Okay, so I had the check engine light on the car, and I used my code reader to pull out the error codes, which was a P0410 code, the secondary air pump. Now, first of all, I reset the code, and the car drove around for 4 or 5 days, and then the check engine light came back on again. I read the codes again, and again there was a P0410 secondary air pump error code, so I knew I had a problem. So now I'm just going to look at the steps you can take to figure out how to fix this problem on a Mercedes SL55. So the first thing to do is to remove the cover. Just held on by these clips. Now, the purpose of the secondary air pump is that when the engine is cold, the air pump pushes air into the exhaust, which warms up the catalytic converters and means that the emissions are reduced when the engine's cold. I'll just show you the main parts of the system. On the SL55, underneath this area in the front wheel well, there is the air pump, and this pushes air up through this hose in here into this this casing. From this casing here, the air then is distributed to these two check valves here, and from these check valves it goes down into the exhaust manifolds. Now, this system will only work for the first 30 seconds when your engine is cold. The check valves here prevent exhaust gases coming back up when the car is running normally, and these check valves are operated by a vacuum, this line here, which in turn is operated by a little electrical switch here to turn the vacuum on and off. So what you can do to work out which part of the system isn't working is to remove this little rubber hose here. If you find that it's a bit difficult to undo, what I usually do is just give it a bit of heat from the hairdryer, and then you should find that you can pull this off quite easily. Then, when you start up the car, if you just feel around this port, you should feel a low pressure pulsing draft of gases. Now, this is the exhaust gases coming up through this check valve and coming out here. Now, if that's happening, that tells me that the check valve is opening, and this switch and the pressure lines are probably good. What I should find is that there's a strong gust of air coming out of this side from the air pump. And in fact, on mine, I found out that the pressure of gas was very similar to here, and again, slight vibration in the gas. What that told me was that this check valve was also working, but the air pump was not pushing air in here as I'd expect. Now, after about 30 seconds, then the electrical valve would operate, and then this gas pressure from here and from this side should stop, and that's exactly what happened. So now I'm pretty sure that the problem is the pump, but there's a couple of things that I need to check first. So the first thing that's worth checking is the fuse and the relay for the pump. And on this right-hand drive SL55, that's located in the small fuse box, which is down here. And the fuse is the third one from the front, that 40 amp fuse. And the relay is actually this one here. Now, if you look very carefully at your wiring diagram to locate this relay, the SL55 has a relay here. The other cars do not have a relay here, and they actually use the relay that's next door, but located in a different position. So that was a little bit confusing and definitely caught me out when I first had a look at this. Now, the other thing to be aware of is that often the reason that the pump fails is that the relay itself binds on, and that causes the pump to run continuously and eventually to burn out. So the recommendation is, if you're going to be replacing the pump, then replace the relay at the same time. Now, this is the relay original equipment part made by Tyco. Now the thing is that these relays are pretty much a standard item, and what you need to find is a 4-pin relay that's normally open and rated for 40 amps. So I was able to pick up an equivalent relay at my local part shop for about $10. So the next thing to do is to pull off this wheel and also the liner for the inside of the wheel. The liner looks like this. It's just a piece of plastic and it's secured by some self-tapping screws and also some little plastic nuts.
Now this is the original air pump made by Bosch. When I went to get some parts, I found that I could get the SL, or the AMG version of this pump, for about £350. You can get the non-AMG version for about £250, and apparently you can swap the motor from the cheaper one into the housing for this pump. But I decided in the end to go with a pattern part for about £120, and it looked very similar to the original and worked pretty well.
So this is the old pump, and you can see that it's held in place by these Torx bolts, and this is the power supply. Now what I had to do on this bracket is just chop through these rubber mountings because I couldn't get the bolts off. They were a little bit rusty and they would just spin against the rubber, so I just cut through the 3 legs that were holding them in place, and now I've got good access to remove them completely.
Now, while cutting the rubbers made it easy to get the pump out, and the kit that I bought from SKP had some new mounts in the kit. It did actually make it much more difficult in the long run because the nuts on the bottom of the frame are actually welded captive nuts. So I had to saw those off with a hacksaw. So I think if I was doing it again, I'd try a little bit harder, maybe buy a better fitting tool to try to remove the top nuts from these mounts, or in fact remove the motor from the frame itself.